So, in this sequence, we, Julie, Amandine, Jules and myself, we will briefly describe what intensive interaction is, what it does, what it achieves, and also how it operates. What are the principles of doing intensive interaction?
Intensive interaction works on the development of the fundamentals of communication.
The fundamentals of communication are things such as learning how to be with another person.
Many people with autism find this extremely challenging.
Developing the ability to attend to another person.
And gradually, therefore, developing concentration and attention span.
And of course, this brings about learning to do sequences of activities with another person.
And probably one of the most critical aspects of early learning for all of us, turn-taking. Taking turns in exchanges of behaviour.
And this leads gradually to the whole learning of the structure of dialogue and conversation.
And gradually, within the free-flowing activities, the learner is rehearsing and learning some really complicated communication knowledge.
Such as using and understanding eye contacts.
Using and understanding facial expressions.
Using and understanding other non-verbal communication.
Using and understanding physical contacts.
Of course, learning to vocalise and using vocalisations meaningfully, including speech.
Intensive interaction gradually enables the person to learn all the routines of connecting and relating with other people.
So, how do we do intensive interaction? How does it work? What are the principles that guide us through the activities?
Nearly all of us learnt how to relate, communicate, interact during our early infancy.
We developed these complicated abilities during natural, free-flowing interactions with adults. Basically, all people, learn to interact during interaction. Intensive interaction was partly developed by carefully studying the research on how those interactions work and function during infancy.
Intensive interaction does not require any fancy equipment. You already have the best equipment there is.
This, you, face, voice, body language, sense of presence.
That's okay.
Used cleverly, this is the best equipment.
Then the first sort of operational principle, the key principle, is, well, sensitivity. Tuning in, we call it.
This process has been called listening with all of your senses to the other person. And have a great time. Enjoyment.
In all of the videos, watch for the teacher person using positioning and what we call the available look.
A key principle, often very difficult for us.
Holding back, not doing too much. observing and waiting.
Being relaxed and unhurried. And perhaps the central big secret of intensive interaction technique,
Allowing the other person to lead, go first.
Take the first turn.
And then you construct the content and the flow of the activity by responding to what the other person does and having the other person enjoy your responses.
There are a variety of ways of responding, but imitation and joining in work really well.
The person who is the learner may take part in bursts, especially at first.
So it's crucial to be prepared to pause and wait for the other person to pause and rest.
Or processing time. Taking time to process and think about what has just happened.
Intensive interaction principles are applied flexibly, but the only absolute rule is that it stops when the other person has had enough. Once again, this is often the difficult bit. Aim for a sense of minimalism in your behaviour and approach.
Relax. Wait, don't do too much. Don't drive the activity.
Or try to make something happen.
Hold back, pause, wait, and give time and space for the learner.
In a sense, you give the learner time and space to be creative, to be powerful and innovate, to work out how to operate you.
In all of the videos, look for the way in which the person who's the teacher attempts to use these principles to activate a flow of turn-taking behaviour.
A kind of conversational flow in the behaviour between the two people. And then look for the way in which, during this flow, many moments of fundamentals of communication practice arise naturally within the enjoyment.
So how is progress made? Through repetition.
Through repetition.
Through repetition.
The enjoyable repetition, the rolling process of the repetition of intensive interaction activities gradually helps the person to learn the deep stuff of interacting, connecting and relating with other people.
You become something he or she can understand and relate to. And first and foremost, you go and join the other person in their world, on their terms.
For a person with autism, our world of usual, everyday social communication can seem terribly complicated, overwhelming even, frightening. Clearly, it is so much easier for us, complicated people, to simplify ourselves, to become something that a person with autism can relate to and understand and make contact with.